So this is another one of our Learn from Everyone's series, and this relates to my old friend and another mentor of mine named Charlie Dixon. Charlie was a good horseman. He was one of the most straight, moral individuals. He had a code of conduct among friends that he absolutely never deviated from. And he carried that same school of thought over to his dealings with horses. But Charlie was a horseman, but he was also a hard man. And he was sort of an Old Testament figure. If a horse was good, he was benevolent. But if he had a bad horse, he did what it needed to keep himself safe and to keep that horse from doing something radically wrong. So, warning, some of what I'm going to say, people are going to call out and say, you can't call that guy a horseman because of what he did. But the hard truth about horses is sometimes you have to do what you have to do. More important to this lesson is the tale of the two stallions that he had down there. And he had just bought both these horses almost simultaneously because he had sold his senior horse and he was breeding. And he had a horse named Napper's Bar, who was by Midget's Bar by 3 bars, which is about as deep in quarter horse / thoroughbred royalty as you can get. And out of a band time mare. He was well bred and he had a terrific track record. He was a AAA horse, racehorse on the track. He held a track record at one of the tracks he had raced at. He was a serious horse. He was black as a lump of coal and handsome. And the other one was by a bloodline, started with a stallion named Blondie's Dude. And if anybody is old enough to remember the Blondie's Dudes, they were pretty horses. They were very athletic. They were very sound. They were versatile. Some of them were rope horses. All of them seemed to be able to win a halter class. They were reiners. They were cow horses. Anything you could do horseback, you could do on them if you could get along with them because they had an edge. So the second horse he had was an own son of Blondie's Dude. And he was kind of the popular horse among people who looked at him because he was so good looking and he was more in style, where the Napper's Bar horse was a rangier, racier type horse. And he had a demeanor in his stall that was not exactly welcoming. The Blondie's Dude stud would stand there like an old cow, just in the stall, just seemed quiet as can be. And the 3-bar stud would pace, and he'd run his teeth along the bars, and he'd snap at things and rear up at the gate, and he looked like he would eat your liver. And I was thinking about breeding a mare. Actually, we bred 2 mares and ended up breeding 1 to each of these horses. I said to Charlie, I said, I really like the black horse, but I worry about his disposition. I mean, he seems downright mean. And Charlie looked at me in astonishment because what wasn't clear to me or most other people was crystal clear to him. He said, oh, Herm, that horse ain't mean. He's just lonesome. He said, just stay here with me for a minute and I'm going to show you something. And he got Napper's out of his stall and he hopped up on this big chest freezer he used as a feed bin. He said, just sit here with me for a minute. So the stallion, who had been all over the place, comes over to him and just puts his head against him. And Charlie says, you have to remember, this horse was a high-level racehorse for 6 years. He lived at the track. He was a successful horse and he had people handling him constantly. It's what he got used to. And he misses it. And I can't give him that level of attention, but it's what he wants. And here was this big, rugged man sitting there with this troubled horse and within about 5 minutes, the horse had his head in Charlie's lap and he had this dreamy look on his face and he was just eaten up being rubbed on. He never nibbled, he never nipped, he stopped moving around. He just showed what a nice horse he really was. And so Charlie puts him back in the stall, and he says, now that other son of a bitch, and he points over at the Blondie's dude horse, he says, I don't trust him one little bit. And this is the part people are going to object to. He pulls up a little piece of sawed-off pitchfork with a short handle. He says, I don't go into that sucker's stall without this. He said, because he hadn't done anything yet, but he's gonna. Well, a few weeks later, I walked into Charlie's place. I was bringing my mare down to get her bred, and I looked in the stall, and here the Blondie's dude horse has 3 little punctures in his neck. And I said to Charlie, what's that all about? He said, well, he'd done what I said he was going to do. He came for me, and if I hadn't had that pitchfork, he'd have had me. I went in the stall to check his water. He was quiet as a mouse, and then he came at me. Now, everybody in the world thought that was the quiet horse, but Charlie knew that he was just waiting for the opportunity for a person to put their guard down at a time when he was having maybe not his best day, so that he could have his chance to get at you. Now, I'm not condoning or suggesting that we walk around disciplining our horses with a pitchfork. That's a little close to deadly force for my taste. But you know what? Charlie stayed upright. He didn't get hurt. The horse got over it. Even though Charlie, the whole time he had him, to my knowledge, never went in that stall with that horse without that pitchfork, because it was still in there. So those were 2 horses. And what I learned was you can misread a horse so easily. And it's something that over time, maybe you gain that skill. I mean, where did Charlie Dixon realize that the black horse was just lonesome? He just needed some attention. He needed to almost be a pet so he wouldn't be troubled. And that was absolutely foreign to Charlie. He was pretty much of a disciplinarian with his horses, old school authoritarian horseman. But this horse needed something different, and he was horseman enough to give it to him. And as he put it, that other son of a bitch was a different story. And he brought that Old Testament side to the table right then. And it probably saved him getting chewed up, because if you've ever seen somebody who is savaged by a stallion, you won't question the need to do what you need to do to keep yourself safe. But be that as it may, this is about reading horses. If you develop that skill, you're going to go so much further. If you realize the horse's motives, their mood, what they need, and you can provide it to them, you're going to get much further than if you just use a cookbook. There are clinicians out there that are giving you cookbooks that are supposed to apply to every horse. Well, what applied to Napper's Bar didn't work for the Blondie's dude horse. It would have been completely suicidal to trust that dude horse the way he exposed himself to the black horse. But he knew he was as safe as could be with the one and was at risk with the other one despite his quiet demeanor. Give that some thought. Thanks.